Welcome to Rock and Blues Review. Today we're going to focus on the Niagara music scene and the future of live music, and there's no better guest than local favorite Thomas Nelson, a talented artist who is well respected by his peers and audiences. Welcome to the show, Thomas.
Hi, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure for sure. Like I said, you're one of the people around here who knows this area, knows this business. And so let's just start with a bit of your history first. You were born in Alabama and raised in New York?
That's correct. Luverne, Alabama, which is about 50 miles south of Montgomery. Um, and my parents migrated to Niagara Falls, New York, when I was a couple of years old. Uh, and sorry about my voice, but I'm suffering from just played a gig last night, singer's voice. So
Well, that's an interesting. Let's come back to that because that is an interesting
okay.
thing. A lot of people don't think about. Uh, I just wanted to ask. I mean, you like Leroy Emanuel of LMT Connection, moved to the Niagara region. You stayed here. So, what was it about this region that brought you fellas here?
Well, the nuts and bolts of it was I married a Canadian woman that got me here, but it started for me when I was about 14 years old when I was performing with my church band, Bethlehem Revival Temple, and our pastor at the time, Reverend Thomas, brought us over to the Skylon, which had been recently built, and I remember sitting there and thinking, "Geez, I'd like to live here." At 14. And so the opportunity presented itself, and I've been here, I don't know, 50, 55 years now.
That can't be. You're only 27, aren't
Well, 26.
you? But there is a wealth of talent in this region. And do you think that it's unusual for there to be so much musical talent around one area?
Well, growing up, I'm not sure about the Canadian scene at the time, but at the time for me in Niagara Falls, New York, there were several scenes that were really close by. So, there's Buffalo, Niagara Falls, there Rochester, Syracuse, and all those places were within a short drive of each other, which made it very convenient to get and not go anywhere else for most of my musical career there. And I think it's quite similar here in that you have Niagara Falls, Niagara on the Lake, St. Catharines, Welland, and more recently, places Vineland and that you don't have to go to Toronto to to make a living and to have a following, etc. So I think it's quite similar that the area that I grew up in and then immigrated to, the music scenes were quite similar in that we had a wealth of places to play. Um,
Right. And but there's also the talent. I mean, I know a lot of people are moving into this region, musicians that we've had over the years from other areas, probably maybe for the same reasons as you. I know Crystal Beach is starting to attract a lot of musicians are moving there. And you've got Brad Krause and Graham Lear in your band, and there's two others with, a lot of talent who either moved here or were born here. It's just interesting that there is so much talent, and when we had the Canal Bank Shuffle, it was always a really good mix of North American or European bands even, but we never had trouble uh, locating a lot of really good talent.
that's correct, and as I was saying, I think the fact that there is a wealth of places to play here, or there were a wealth of places to play here through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, that people that wanted to play were rewarded with being able to go out and play to an audience. And
Right.
so you had a lot of people that were interested in doing that. And then, now, as you mentioned, it's almost become a mecca for a lot of Toronto musicians and the like.
Oh, we got a lot of comments about especially Toronto musicians saying they can't believe the scene here. And I think it's kind of shifted for whatever reason to this area, and it's kind of kept it alive. But I want to get back to your history a little bit. You mentioned at 14 and in church, but what was your start in music? Because you had a band by 16, so uh,
That, that's correct. Yeah. Yeah, my start in music was the church. My dad and his uncles were vocalists, and they had a group that I used to sing in as a 5 year old. That was quite those types of groups were really popular at the time, like the Mighty Clouds of Joy and the Staple Singers and those kinds of things. So I started singing in my family's church at 5 years old as a soloist, group singer with my family. By the time I was 14 or 15, I'd been through maybe about three different Christian faiths at the time. So the first one was the Baptist, and then ending up in the Pentecostal church was where I picked up and started playing bass from a guy who would come up from Texas, from Austin, Texas, a guy by the name of, we called him Brother Ware. He had a jazz bass that he had brought up. I had never seen one before up close. And along with Nelson Thomas, who was the guitar player in the church group, I moved over from drums to playing bass.
hmm.
And my first road trip was with Reverend Brother Ware, and we did a tour across New York State, stopping in Rochester and Syracuse, and ending up in New York City. I think I was probably 14 or 15 then. Yeah.
And that brings me back to your comment earlier about having rough voice this morning from last night. First of all, when you transition from youth to an adult, the voice sometimes changes. So you were lucky that you were able to maintain a good voice. I did not. Mine disappeared
Yeah.
completely. But how do
Yeah.
you? But that's the other thing I mentioned, that people don't think about the voice as an instrument and how much training is involved to keep that in shape.
Well, for me, training was performing, and for voice in high school, or sorry, junior high school, I guess it was. I was in a barbershop quartet, which was pretty unusual at the time. Uh, so I think it was grade 7. My music teacher, Mrs. Smith, um, knew that I could sing, I guess, from church, and put me in the barbershop quartet, and that experience, uh, apart from just singing, gave me an opportunity to hear really close intervals of singing. And your musician guests will know what I'm talking about. You may as well, but being able to sing a close interval, a major second or minor third from someone that's standing right next to you is is a skill to learn. And so I learned that at that age.
And so when you were starting, well, so you got the barbershop, you got the church,
Yeah.
you got an introduction to bass. Did you have any visions or expectations of where you were going musically when you were that young?
No, I started. I left the church playing bass because I'd entered into at 16 in my high school, grade 9. I'd entered a talent contest, and as a vocalist, and I picked a couple of tunes, a Smokey Robinson tune. I think it was "You Send Me" and "My Girl." That's what it was.
Mm.
And the reaction that I received was a surprise to me. And so the guys that my friend Les Bridgman, who I'd known just through classes, put a band together for me, and we did the show, and it turned out really well. So I was playing in the church three services a week, 4 services a week, and we weren't getting paid at the time. And so less, knowing the school scene, the dances, etc. So he says, well, let's put together a band and start playing these high school dances. So that's what I did from the time I was 16 until I started playing in bars at 18. And I played with Les Bridgman, Frank Grisani, Tom Tarpinian, and Jan Krupa probably every Saturday night for probably 2 or 3 years through that high school period. And I was singing, and actually all of the bands that I've been in throughout my career, I've been the primary singer. There have been some bands where we've had other singers or backup singers and stuff like that, but I've been the main vocalist. And so having that experience of playing that often and then getting into the bars and playing 3 or 4 nights a week, my voice just got really strong, and it's starting to show its wear, but that's what brought it together, right? So
Right.
after a night like last night, it was only 2 sets I did, but you get through maybe 20 tunes, and some of them are close to the top of my range now, and it wears, yeah.
Right. Now you mentioned that you're the major singer most of the time, and it is unusual, obviously not for you, but it is unusual to have the bass player as the focal point and the lead singer. Have you ever considered, like just focusing on one or the other?
Not since. How did it happen? I was that same first band that I told you about. We were at a rehearsal once, and Jimi Hendrix had become really popular, and I bought the album and brought it to the rehearsal. And through an accident, our bass player that we had, Gary Terwilliger, had broken his arm, and so we hired a guy named Frank Grisani, who was a well-known guitar player in the area, to play bass for us. But through once this album came out, I said, geez, I'd like to be doing some of this material. Does anybody know it? And Frank stepped up and said, well, yeah, I know all this stuff. But our guitar player was Les Bridgman, and Les didn't want to play bass. So I said, well, I can play a little bit. So we put that thing together. And so once I started playing bass and singing, I continued doing that almost exclusively until now I take a couple of gigs here and then as a vocalist only. I did a show a month or so ago as a vocalist, but I've always since then considered myself a bass player singer, and you're right. Sometimes it's difficult, especially once I became a band leader, is leading a band from the bass chair. If you're not a Bootsy Collins or a Rick James or a Marcus Miller, if you're not that, pardon me, of that flavor, then it's yeah, I'm a singer and I'm a bass player, and which with the guys that I've been working with, as you know, I am the only singer, and any attempts to get the other guys to sing have come with blank stares.
Well, well, sometimes that's a good thing. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
but you did mention traveling a bit. So how much on the road were you when you were younger?
yeah. I did a lot. I didn't travel at all until I was like about 22 years old. Like I grew up, like I said, in the Western New York area, and then once I moved to Canada, I think it was probably 1976 or so. I decided I was going to try and do something else other than just playing local. So I was put in touch with this band called Terry D, and at the time, a lot of the musicians were playing in these show bands. I think they're called tribute bands now, but at the time they were called show bands. And so I saw this band, and great players. They had a show, blah blah blah. So I went out to see them audition, got the gig, and I think the first gig we had was the drummer and I joined at the same time, so we had to drive the equipment truck to Ottawa,
Hmm.
and then to to Halifax. And when I did that trip, I couldn't believe that you could drive so far for so long and not get anywhere. And
Right.
so, yeah. So, the fact of being on the road hit pretty hard because, well, it's what, 7, 8 hour drive to Ottawa, and then it's like almost a 2 day drive to Halifax. So I kept that gig for probably about a year and a half. The money was poor, trying to raise a family or trying to support a family. And so came back home and got some local gigs, and and then gave it up again probably about 6 years later when I moved to Toronto and started um, went there. Rick Taylor. I joined
Sure.
Rick Taylor's band here and played a lot of clubs in London and Windsor and those places like that. And so throughout that time, ended up in, I don't know, as far west as Vancouver, as far east as Newfoundland, and as far north as I don't know what some of those places, Kapu's Casing, and
Right, right.
that whole thing. Rouen, Quebec, that was a famous one as well. So, yeah, I did a lot of traveling through, especially from '80 to about '84. Mark Haynes and the Zippers were on the road a lot. Um, but I guess being on the whole spectrum of things, I didn't do as much as some guys have done, which is like just on the road constantly.
Right.
And I just got to the point where I just wanted to be home, and uh, it was fun at the time. Yeah.
Right. But you've been fortunate, and a lot of that has to do with, as I mentioned at the top, your talent and your ability to get along with and be impressed by your peers and impressing them and forming such good relationships. But you've also got a lot of connections in this area over the years, and you mentioned the venues. And I remember, Joe's Place back in the day,
Hmm.
and Jambone.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. 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 I've been really fortunate that way, Bob. Jambone, once that was the band I put together with Pat Dewey and Rick Labrie when I moved back from Toronto in the '90s, and that band was so much fun and such a great experience. Just the three of us putting it together in the rehearsals, and I remember we finally got a gig, and we were sitting out inside of the rehearsal hall, and we didn't have a name yet. And so we said, well, what are we going to call it, right? And that's how Jambone. So anyway, uh, and I've been fortunate with having residencies for like Joe's Place was, I think we were there every Thursday for about 3 years. Um, and most recently, the Crystal Chandelier, I played there almost, well, starting my ninth year
hmm,
for, every other Friday there. Um, the other venue I have with my trio now is at Spirit in Niagara, where I've been playing there for every other Monday for the past going on 4 years. Yeah.
right.
So that's been like, I guess they say, if you're not doing well, they don't keep you around for very long. So, but I've been able to hang on to those residencies. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's no accident, as I mentioned. And, I just wanted to mention, Jambone, and I remember seeing you with Joe Ingro
Hmm.
a couple times, and he was such a good player. Plus, he was such a character.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. If you weren't laughing when Joe was around, there was something wrong with you, right? Uh, because he just had stories upon stories and stories that just never ended. They would resume once you got back to the gig on another week, right? So yeah.
And he seemed so, I don't know if the word is laid back or nonchalant, but I remember him getting up in the middle of a gig and getting a cup of coffee and coming back to the keyboard. Like, it's,
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. And then slay you with his playing, right? So Joe was, once. And I think Joe had recently moved back to the area too, or he was playing with another the Ants. That's who he was playing with at the
Oh
time, and
yeah,
I
right,
think
right.
they had slowed down or whatever, and he started playing with Jambone, and that was just such a lift. I mean, he sang as well, and of course, he was a killer B3 player, and then
Mhm.
Stan Simcoe also stepped in and started playing sax. So some of the things that Jambone as a trio had learned to do with some of the tunes we were covering, like Steely Dan and Robert Cray and stuff. Some of the horn parts, we would just sing them. And so, we could sort of lay down and take it a little bit easier once Joe and Stan got in the band.
Yeah. And there's another band you just threw in there, the Ants. I mean, a big band with a lot of talent. And again,
Hmm.
coming back to that pool of talent in this area. And fortunately, I mean, most of you seem to get along. Is it a brotherhood or is there?
Yeah, no, we're all friends. We've some of us have known each other like since our teens. Like I've known John Navaroli, and actually never played with John Navaroli in Niagara Falls, New York, until we moved here. John Moltari, we met through his uncle Rito, who recently passed away. But Rito and I played in bands. Rito's a keyboard player. So of course, Billy and I never played together. We're both bass player brothers, but we know each other, and
Right.
uh, uh, haven't spent a lot of time together. But there's I've often subbed in for him, especially a few years ago. My band and the Ants, which transformed into Soul Jam now, played at the Spice Lounge and the Hilton a lot, and quite often it would either be me with my band or me with Soul Jam at the at the Hilton. So yeah, yeah, and Alistair, who is a sax player in Soul Jam, as you know, often plays with my band as well, right? So it's a circle of friends that as much as we can get together, we do. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were kind of the symbol of the talent in the area because they all sang.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
and then uh, John Newdorf would come in occasionally, and he was a great singer.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, who have you played with that you really enjoyed, uh, aside from maybe some of those guys, or anybody you got to join with?
Hmm. Well, most of my career from like once I moved here until probably until I moved back in the 90s was as a sideman. I had played with, like as I said, Rick Taylor's band for a while. Really enjoyed Rick, and Rick and I were able to get back together recently a couple of years ago at the Crystal Chandelier and had a residency there for the summer. But Rick introduced me to a woman, Colleen Peterson, who I really, really enjoyed working with. And we, as you know, she passed away at a very young age in the 90s, and but I really enjoyed working with her. And through that connection, um, we did some really nice work. We opened for Gordon Lightfoot at Massey Hall 9 evenings for his spring show in that year. I've done a fair bit of CBC work, which would had guests like Valdi from Vancouver and Pair of Pied Pumpkin, I think they were called. Sherry Ulrich played with her. Um, Mark Haynes, I feel like is a brother, and he had a band when I moved to Toronto called Mark Haynes and the Zip Hers, Hurs. And I joined and Marty Posen was one of the mandolin guitar players at the time, and Doug Ford, uh, uh, John Theodore became one of the keyboard players. But again, I was with that band probably longer than any other group that I've been with other than my own for 4 years. And, we had, there's a vinyl record out with that we recorded. But the um, the friendship there that developed is still ongoing. I was out to see Mark last year. He lives in PEI and has been there for the past 25, 30 years. And so we got together with John Theodore and Doug Jang, who was the drummer in that band, is out there now, and I can't be out there because of my gigs. But yeah, so we stay in touch. And um, as far as like ultra famous people, never got to that to that point, right?
I think those are okay.
No, the people that I worked with, as far as I am concerned, were ultra famous, and like I said, I still have relationships with them. So,
Yeah. And fame has certainly got nothing to do with talent or, we just see so many great musicians, especially who don't have that popularity, but man, oh man, it,
hmm
sometimes it's unbelievable that they could be so talented and still be kind of below the radar, or at least
hmm
not filling the auditoriums. But again, that's good for us as fans because we get to see them in small venues. Uh,
hmm And speaking of which, I know, have seen a lot of exactly what you're talking about. That these people are so talented that you just wonder, like, why are they playing here? But you have to work, and thank God they are playing here because I want to hear them. People want to hear them, but yeah, they're not filling stadiums or whatever. But you've seen so much of that, I know, because you've reported on it back uh, through your not your professional thing, but some of your occasional trips here and there. So,
yeah, that is amazing. So let's just talk a bit about you. You touched on it briefly, and that is, when you got a trio and uh, again, I don't think audiences quite understand the importance of a good rhythm section. Now, your peers get it, obviously, especially in the studio, but when
mhm.
you're the timing and tightness of the rhythm section is so important, and they're not looking for a bass solo, you know, normally.
No, 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 no. And I mean, that's one of those traps that you can sort of get caught up in when, especially like when, as a bass player, when Jocko hit the scene, um, and you want to play Jocko licks and et cetera, et cetera. But the leader in the band and the singer don't want to hear that, and so you either get awarded a section in the show or whatever to be able to do that, but don't do that when the major part of the show because it just doesn't work.
Right. But again, have you ever had a situation where uh, you've run into where they don't, maybe you're working with somebody who doesn't understand uh, the importance of that timing and rhythm of the rhythm section?
Uh, I would say yes, I have. And usually when I think in my situation anyway, the reason for that is I play so many genres of music. We'll do, as you know, I do a fair bit of Ked Mo stuff. I do Al Jarreau, uh, Material, Stevie Wonder, uh, and a lot of those grooves and pushes, etc., and stuff are locked in, and they are what they are. And it's not a jam, as such. It's I mean, you're covering it, and so and sometimes what happens is there is an opportunity to jam on a certain tune, but the band has to sort of agree on that as a unit. And so when it goes there, it goes there. But if it's in the main section of the tune, then it is what it is. You know,
Right.
as a bass player and as a singer, um, it it without uh, attaching too much to it, but that's a lot of power in the band.
Right.
and a lot of expectation in the band, I guess, is that things will be a certain way, you know.
Yeah. And I think what I'm getting at is that I think musicians understand bass and drums better than, the general public. They
Hmm.
not necessarily tuned in, but I guess that's par for the course.
Well, it's a marriage of sort, right? The bass player and the drummer, and it is. The one experience that I had, which was really rewarding, is that I worked with a lot of good drummers in this area. Pat Dewey, who doesn't perform anymore, was a great drummer. Um, that I worked with. John Moltari is a great drummer. And of course, I worked with Graham Lear was in my band for 4 years. And, it was just something with him, there was never a discussion about it. It just worked. And,
Right. Right.
uh, um, you know, why? It just worked.
Now
Yeah.
you mentioned Keb Mo a second ago, and I got to tell you, Max Hillier says you do Keb Mo better than Keb Mo.
Well, I don't know what Max means by that, but but
No one ever does.
yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. He's actually said that to me too, but I don't I don't get it. So
Well, yeah, I know it's tough. But again, so let's talk about those guys. You mentioned, some of the bands you covered and some of your favorites. Um, so, do you have a genre or a favorite that you prefer to cover?
no, that's why I have probably about 150 tunes in my repertoire because as a performer entertainer, I'd like to be able to number one sort of try and see or try and uh, guess what my audience might want to hear or what style they want to hear or and then how am I feeling at that time too, sometimes especially with the Kev Mo stuff, the stories that he's been remarkable at putting together are stories that I really relate to, and so I feel like I can perform them in a way that's real, and uh, that makes sense coming out of my mouth. So sometimes I do tune or do a set. Actually, at the Crystal Chandelier, sometimes I used to market it as first set or the whole night will be Keb Mo, you know,
Hmm,
and
right.
so we can pull that off. But I also like the singers, Al Jarreau, Stevie Wonder, um, Aretha Franklin, you know, all those people. Esperanza Spalding, we do one of her tunes. Um, as a bass player, I would love to play Marcus Miller stuff,
Hmm.
um, and um, at times we've attempted to do some of that genre stuff. We do some we before the band lost Stan, we did some Crusaders stuff, which is a little bit more instrumental. Average White Band has a tune that we play a fair bit. So yeah, I like to be able to do those singer songs, and I like to be able to do those bass player tunes as well. They keep it interesting.
Right. And you mentioned reading your audience and making changes as you go. And I have to assume that, doing a set list is a lot like putting together a festival. You've got to decide, your likes as opposed to the audience likes and make sure you've got a good balance.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and you can tell pretty quickly if you're observant if what you're doing isn't working. And so unless you're prepared to sort of move on and get something that's going to try and work, then you'll lose the audience, and people start leaving for whatever reason. I mean, you can't really uh, decide why people are leaving, but you can tell from their reaction, and it's not just applause or no applause. It's just uh, their body. You can tell from people's
Right. So,
nonverbal.
but and just jump back again a second. You mentioned Jaco Pastorius. Do you have a lot of favorite bass players? Because again, you're going to be tuned into that where most people don't know that many great players, but there are a lot of great bass players.
Hmm. Oh my God. And especially, I mean, have you seen YouTube lately?
Yeah,
Right? They're just, and especially some of the younger players that are out there now. It's that the chops they have now, and the understanding of the of music itself is just uh, is way out there.
right,
To the point where, I mean, you have to sort of cap it as, I mean, as a performer at my age, and et cetera, et cetera. Not that I'm feeling that I'm out of it due to being a long term player, because some of those players and some of them are still making a mark.
right,
But the ability to see what other people are doing now is just it's endless.
right.
And then you have to decide, well, like, where are you going to play that, and who's going to listen to that other than your YouTube following, et cetera, et cetera, and decide whether or not you want to be a YouTube performer, or you're going to involve yourself in a venue that's going to expand your audience.
Do you think that there's enough venues coming around to keep the live scene going for a while?
Uh, there's the wineries are doing a tremendous are providing a tremendous benefit for a lot of musicians. From what I know of the scene, it's usually a duo, trio kind of scene. So the bands that were, that I came up playing 4 or 5 piece bands, but that's not the norm in the area anymore. The norm is a trio, quartet at the most.
Okay, Thomas. So thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you coming on the show today and spending some time with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Bob. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for considering me for it.
Oh, no problem at all.
Yeah.
You're a wealth of information, and I know we could probably talk another hour, but we better not.
Okay. All right. That's right. We don't want to bore our audience, right?
Well, yeah, that's never the goal.
That's, yeah.
All right. Anyway, thank you so much and take care. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, Bob. Thanks. Take care.
You too.
Okay. Bye now.